exclusive to Rogers Multicultural Channel. Watch the excitement of Grand Sumo Digest. From Sunday, May 24th to Sunday, June 7th, you can see all the action and ceremony of this ancient Japanese fighting art. Sumo dates back to the year 300. Now you can see sumo daily with Grand Sumo Digest at 8:30 a.m. and midnight. Tune to Cable 20. In the North Shore and White Rock, watch Cable 57. Sumo on Rogers Multicultural Channel.
Sports fans, don't miss the lacrosse game of the week this Sunday at 3 p.m. and repeating at 10 p.m. Teams from the Western Lacrosse Association and the BC Junior A Lacrosse League, the Samavellis, the Lakers, the Adnaks, the Indians, the Shamrocks, and the Brards will battle it out for lacrosse supremacy throughout the entire summer. And you'll be able to catch all the action along with lacrosse tips, player profiles, and insightful commentary. Don't miss the action. Tune to Cable 4, Rogers Community Television, every Sunday at 3 and 10 p.m.
The Comedy Network presents... Oh!
Should abbreviation be such a long word?
Thanks for clearing that one up for me.
Canada's Top Comics.
When I get famous, I'm gonna shower.
Look at the name of our country, Canada.
In the spotlight.
Blink. Been wanting to dance?
Showcasing Canada's top comics, the Comedy Network presents Sunday at 9 on the Comedy Network.
It's taken over 25,000 years to develop. It's able to withstand thousands of pounds per square inch. It's the latest in exercise equipment, and you sit on it every day. Chair Aerobics on Rogers Community TV.
You're watching Rogers Community Television.
This program is sponsored by Good Water Resources Incorporated, distributor of the free play self-powered lantern. For ordering information, call 1-888-983-3439. Visa or MasterCard accepted. Buy it before you need it.
Let me ask you a question. They have destroyed the economy of the North. Do you like to live in a city that has a higher break-in rate than Chicago? What's your call? Well, we're here today. We're going to talk about a couple of things, but the major thing we're going to talk about is the Chiapas situation down in Mexico. And we have the Consul General of Mexico here. We have a fellow named Colin McNaughton who was down looking and is there as an observer, and he's going to tell you his story. We're going to talk to the Mexican consulate about what the government's position is and whether it's safe to travel in Mexico, all those good things. On my desk, what do I got here? I have The Great Pursuit, 1998. It's a Media Cup, second place it says, and our very own Leslie Payne won, or came in second, I guess, here in their scavenger hunt where they went all over the place of North Shore picking up things, and it was a charity for the North Shore Association for the Mentally Handicapped, and I congratulate Leslie in doing that. I think it's fantastic, and anybody who is out there who's got a few spare bucks around, there's, I told you I was going to give you $100 for your deal, Leslie. There it is. We'll stick some money in the limousine, and you can take it away. Just make sure that we get a receipt, right? Because if we make a donation to the North Shore Association for the Mentally Handicapped, we end up and we get a charitable receipt, and that way it only costs us half as much, so 60% of it or something. So go for it, everybody. Is there a phone number or someplace that people can? Well, let's get something on the screen after a while, and we'll tell them where they can send some more money in, because good organization and never have enough money to keep on going. Workshops and this kind of thing are important. Now, if you have a computer hard drive and it is getting full, and I don't care whether you got a 4 gigabyte hard drive or an 800 megabyte hard drive or a 40 megabyte hard drive, whatever it is, it gets full. This morning's Globe and Mail Technology Plus in the section in the Globe and Mail, has the latest data called a removable feast. Storing your data, even the biggest drives fill up before you know it in these days of fancy text formatting, color graphics, and full motion video. That means you really need a way of taking all those megabytes out of your computer. And here are the latest options in removable storage. So anybody out there that has a hard drive that's getting full or just has a computer and wants to know where to put all the stuff that's on it, go out, get today's Globe and Mail, because the section on the removable feast, how to back up your hard drive, is worth buying. Good as any computer magazine you'll get. The fears growing from the front page of the Vancouver Sun triggers and goes along with the topic that we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about Mexico, and I want to make sure that everybody understands that we're not going to nail Mexico or anything, if that's the right word. We have some pictures here, and I can drive you around BC, take you up to the McLeod Reserve, take you a whole bunch of different places, and you will find that there are worse situations here in British Columbia on some of our reserves, and on top of that it gets cold in the winter. So anything that you hear here today, I want to tell you, is just as bad in British Columbia. And look at the front page of the Vancouver Sun today. Fears growing that BC will abandon the treaty process. The BC government has been patting itself on the back. This is the Clark government, right? Been patting itself on the back for the past 5 years over the way it was working with the federal government and First Nations to resolve the land's long-standing grievances of the province's Native Indian bands. Let me tell you, if we don't settle, you've heard me say it before, if we don't settle Indian land claims in this province, you can kiss it goodbye. The province's economy will collapse. And on Tuesday, we've got Harry Slade, who wrote the chapter on settling land claims in the Laurier Institution's book, Prospering Together. He will be here. We're going to talk about it in great detail. Anyway, let's take a commercial break for a couple of minutes. We'll be right back talking about Chiapas, Mexico.
If a group of people were meeting to decide the future of development in your community, your neighborhood, on your street, would you want to know what was going on? City Council coverage on Rogers Community Television. It's real, it's important, it's your life.
Can television be good for kids 6 and under? I'm so excited. Now from YTV, the network that knows kids, there's a whole new specialty channel that thinks about preschoolers all the time.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Safe, friendly, commercial-free TV from early morning to bedtime.
Morning.
Familiar friends and new shows from home and around the world.
I mean, how else can a little kid travel?
If you're not receiving Treehouse TV today, call your local cable company.
A taste of India. The sights, the sounds, the delectable aromas. India's regional culinary delights, easy to prepare in your own kitchen.
A crazy situation, and we're on the air, aren't we? Well, that's all right. Colin McNaughton, you buttonholed me at the Vancouver Public Library when I was down there for the Michelle Fosadowski speech, which was dealing with multilateral agreement on investment down at the Vancouver Library, Connie Fogel's group, and you were telling me that you had just come back from Chiapas, Mexico, that you had things that you wanted to talk and thought that this program would be a good forum for it. Now, on your right is the Consul General of Mexico, and Gabriel Rosales Vega, is that, have I got it right?
Correct.
If I don't pronounce it right, please tell me. My enunciation is really bad on these kinds of things, and I have no skill for languages whatsoever. And you've been kind enough to come down, and as I understand, you didn't really recognize what it was we were bringing you down to talk about. So if you feel uncomfortable about anything in this and you would like to come back because there's more information that you've got, please let me know. And again, for the audience's benefit, Colin brought down a whole bunch of pictures, and we've actually taken some of the pictures out because the Consul General has felt that there are other pictures that would be together with it. And as I've said to both of you, I can show you pictures worse than the province of British Columbia. If we want to talk about armed guards, we can go to Duffy Lake, we can go to the Apex Ski Resort, we can go to Gustafson Lake, we can go to Duffy Road closure. We've had all sorts of hassles. I can go to Montreal and find the blocking of the bridge, and several times lately I've said, hey, what happens if the boys in North Vancouver decide to blockade the Second Narrows and the First Narrows Bridge? Neither of you would have made it here this morning, right? And they have the legal right, if they got the right to it. I mean, they own the land on each end of the bridges that you two likely came over to get to this studio this morning. So, now that I've settled that, I'm on the side of the natives, all the way along here, right? We've made that clear, right, Emily? I'm on the side of the natives. I think we've got to give them back more of the land. We have to settle the treaties. What is happening in Mexico that I don't know about?
During the last several years, the human rights situation in Mexico has deteriorated to a very dangerous level. As of December 22nd of last year, there was a massacre, a horrendous massacre in which 45 indigenous human beings, 21 women, 15 children, and 9 men were brutally massacred by paramilitary groups which have connections with the Seguridad Pública, the Mexican military, and are financed and trained, provided weapons with by the Mexican government.
Okay, do you have any any proof of that? I mean, how do you know that they are funded by the government?
Well, last year, one of these paramilitary groups, which is called Paz y Justicia, Peace and Justice, was given $450,000 American by the Mexican government. This is fact, documented.
Okay. Would you agree with this? Do you know of this situation?
No.
You don't agree? Okay.
That's the problem, that I agree fully that the situation in Mexico, in particular in Chiapas, is difficult. When you talk about human rights, I think first you have to define what is a violation of human rights, because that there are problems and that there is conflict is one issue, and that the government is really affecting persons, that's another issue. And that's what I would consider human rights violation. If the problem is a conflict between persons who live in the same area, it's not human rights violation. It's personal conflict or groups conflict. And what these groups that call themselves human rights observers are doing, and such as Mr. McNaughton is doing now, is just saying, well, we believe that this is supported by the government. We think that those are paramilitary groups that have been armed by the government, but there is no evidence whatsoever of what he's saying about the relation or the connections with the government as an institution. What is true and what has happened and what has been condemned is the fact that certain persons who have been able to make their way through the government or made their way through some of the political parties, even connected with the PRI, which is the ruling party, have been found guilty of criminal acts, which is true. But it's a different issue to say that certain individuals have committed crimes than to say that the government as an institution and as a whole it's behind that as a masterminder of a diabolic massacre.
Okay, in other words, what you're saying, and I can do exactly the same as I told you when we were at the I mean, if we go down to Brooklyn, Montana, to the reservation down there, the claims of genocide and so on have been made. But let's keep on, because I haven't been there and I don't know it. I think it's accepted on everybody's side that 45, or I thought it was 47 people were killed, and they think they were machine gunned, were they not? Or?
They were machine gunned. They were cut open with machetes. Pregnant women were disemboweled. The babies were taken out, tossed around by the paramilitaries on their machetes. Meantime, for 5 hours, the state police were within 200 yards of this whole affair, and they did nothing.
And didn't stop it?
No, they were actually protecting the paramilitaries, according to a taped interview I have with the responsible of the village, whose name I shall not give, because if I do so, the Mexican security will do their
so what we're talking about is a very real atrocity that took place. But the Canadian, and again, the Canadians, we are going through, we've disbanded a major government paramilitary, military organization of the Canadian Armed Forces because of atrocities that were committed by our own troops in Somalia. So, aren't we against atrocities or this kind of thing anywhere? Isn't that what the end result of what we're trying to get out of here is?
It should be. Canada really has not made a strong stand with regards to any of this. They sent a delegation of 5 persons down, 5 parliamentarians, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and really nothing has come out of that, with the exception that they say, yes, there is extreme poverty and poor conditions in Chiapas, and the Mexican government has promised to do all it can to remedy the situation.
What is the Mexican, from your side of this, what does the Mexican government promise to do?
To stop what they are doing, to stop the intimidation, the repression, the murder, the torture, the disappearance, the rape, the burning of homes, the burning of crops.
Go on. That's a tactic. To present the issue as more dramatic and as more novelistic as could be possible, his description of taking babies out of the moms and things like that. It was a very sad situation. I agree, it's a very sad situation. It did happen. Nobody denies that it happened. What I'm arguing, and what he hasn't been able to prove anymore, is that the government was behind that. And what I'm also saying is that the Mexican government, if the parliamentary Canadians didn't say anything, was because they didn't find anything. There wasn't that evidence that he's referring that the government is provoking that. Okay. Let me tell you something. Mexico has been very much damaged because that fact, because the image, the appearance that we get abroad, because these type of issues affect us a lot. Then I don't see how could be in the interest of our own country, of our own government, to damage our own people, to kill our own people. That doesn't happen.
It doesn't do you any good in terms of tourism or anything else, does it?
But not only on tourism, I mean in any aspect. I mean, we Mexicans don't kill each other because we want to kill each other, and the government is not willing to do so. For Mexico, for the Mexican government, Chiapas is a big problem that we are trying to solve, but through different ways. One of those ways is to provide to that people better training, infrastructure, communication, trying to find employment for them, try to attack poverty to them. Another issue is go to the political causes of the problem, the different political interpretations and the different political views that have been expressed there. Another issue has been try to establish dialogue with the SZLN, or the Zapatistas, as has been known, as a way to try to find a solution. And there has been even an initiative of law that has been presented in order to correct the situation. But all what we hear as a response are negatives of dialogue from the Zapatista groups and this type of comments promoted through the internet, trying to present the situation in Mexico as something very sad, as something very difficult to pass, and the bad government behind trying to kill all those poor women that have their babies there. I mean, we are interested to improve their situation, but the way to do it, it's with a long-term strategy, with planning, and with the respect to human rights. And I don't agree with what you say that the government promises to stop doing it, because I don't accept what you say that it's doing it as a whole. But I would not rule out that there has been certain cases or certain exceptions, because there have been individuals who have abuse of their authority or of their power, which happens everywhere.
I actually have somebody that I know that isn't very far away that found himself arrested and in a police car in Mexico that turned out afterwards not to be a real policeman and not to be a real police car, but was the nephew of the police chief who wanted to be a policeman, so he got himself a car and decked it out as a policeman and had a deal and went around arrested him. That person is actually on the premises, but I'm not going to bother with that, because in my own family, somebody in my own family was stopped and beaten up by police in Surrey who turned out not to be police. And the police chiefs in the United States have issued warnings about the number of people that are driving around looking like police cars and they have issued an official warning to women and people that if you are being stopped in a strange area or something by what appears to be a police car, acknowledge that you are there and drive to a lighted place with lots of people around, because it is happening so often. So again, Colin, for everything you tell me that happened in Mexico, I'll give you one in North America. So keep on, but I'm
The dispute between the Zapatistas and the government,
and I'm on the side of indigenous peoples,
was formed in order to resolve this dispute. It's called the COCOPA. It entails 15 members from the 3 different political parties of the government. They had met with the EZLN for a period of 2 years. At the end of these 2 years, a set of accords was presented. They were sent to the government. The government made some changes, sent back, and after some communication with the people of Chiapas, the Zapatistas accepted these changes which the government had made. Now what was necessary was that these accords be sent to the National Congress of Mexico to be ratified. They are a proposal that was created by the government, but in the last 2 years, these have not been ratified. Instead, the Mexican government has talked of peace. Meantime, they have built up more than 80,000 troops in Chiapas.
80,000
soldiers, Mexican federal soldiers.
Okay.
I don't think that's accurate. Well, let me go back.
We may have to continue this on another day as well, but a statement of 80,000 troops, that's for sure?
Do you have proof
yes,
of that?
Yes, I have proof of that.
How?
From the Enlace Civil reports, from the Fray Bartolome Human Rights. The UN has reports of these numbers of troops as well, and of the responsibility of the Mexican government in the disappearances and torture of...
Not the UN.
Yes, the UN does. I've got the information right here.
Let's go first to your issue about the law. It is true, there has been a law that has been under discussion by the Zapatistas and the government, and through the participation of the COCOPA and another institution called the CONAI. And last April, the government presented an initiative that took what was agreed in those San Andres Accords last year, or 2 years ago, with the idea to precisely pass a law that could guarantee the rights of indigenous culture. And let me tell you that it's very interesting all what is part of that legislation, because, for example, it says be able to collectively use and benefit from the natural resources of their lands, territories, understanding that these lands encompasses the entire habitat and the indigenous people use and occupy, except those lands whose direct dominion pertain to the nation.
We're trying to negotiate that in the province of British Columbia, and CFUN Radio right now as we talk has a debate going, or had a debate on between 8:30 as whether or not 12-year-old Aboriginals in the province should be given licenses to carry guns for a native food fishery. That was the big debate on CFUN at 8:30 this morning. So.
Yeah, and issues like, for example, the corresponding legislation will establish the necessary mechanisms in order for indigenous communities and peoples to be taken into consideration regarding their cultural needs and characteristics in development plans and programs. The state will guarantee their equal access to the distribution of the national wealth. Issues like to enact the laws which establish the participation of the federal government, the states and municipalities, etc.
Are these the original accords?
Yeah, yeah.
No, these were changed. These were unilaterally changed.
Let me tell you where they were changed.
3 months ago by President Cedillo.
Let me tell you where they were changed.
No, I am completely against Chiapas or anything else similar to it. I don't misunderstand. And to bring this to our audience here in the Lower Mainland, I think is important, because we have to realize just how far and how bad this kind of thing goes. And we have to, in my opinion, use the Chiapas situation to point out, in our Somalia situation with our own troops and so on, to point out that if we don't solve the thing with this kind of accord, if we don't make a negotiation, the same thing could happen here.
Let me tell you why those agreements hasn't been approved. Because the government made some amendments, and one of those says, with respect for the other provisions of these constitutions and for the unity of the Mexican state, the indigenous people have the right to self-determination, the specific expression of which is the autonomy of the indigenous communities in order to, and repeats in several parts, these procedures, rights, and rulings can be violated by the Mexican jurisdictional under the terms stated by the law.
Okay.
In other words, what they don't accept is that there is still a law in Mexico that has to be applied to all Mexicans and that has to be equal for all Mexicans, and Mexico is one country, and we cannot have autonomous regions or independent regions without having the whole framework. And that has been basically the point of this agreement. We want the Mexican government, the proposal from the Mexican government is try to give those rights to indigenous people and focus in their culture and so on, but with the respect to the law that is valid now in Mexico.
So you're trying to settle your claims, and perhaps more force got used by some groups. We've only got about 2 minutes before the go break, but we're going to continue this for the next half hour too. What is wrong with what they're trying to do? I mean, we accept that everybody got killed. We accept that.
Right. The accords that were agreed to by both parties 2 years ago, over 2 years ago, were not ratified by the Mexican government. Instead, Cedillo made some very crucial changes and then signed it and said, oh, look, I've signed these accords. But in reality, it's a farce because they are not the original accords, and that's why the EZLN is not accepting this whole farce.
Well, here are all the presentations.
You say autonomy.
One side and
Lately,
the other.
the government has gone in with hundreds of military security police. Now they have women security police as well to beat up the indigenous women who used to go out and confront the army, indigenous women and children.
Dramatic.
Okay, these autonomous municipalities that have been set up by the Zapatistas, the government goes in and crushes them. There is no autonomy for the indigenous people in any of these accords or in the truth of what is going on in Chiapas.
Okay.
Let me tell you something. It is true that there are troops from the state for the military in Chiapas, it's true. And that has been a measure that we have considered necessary in order to maintain peace in the region.
To protect
because
the
the situation is quite complex. And there are very different groups from different political and religious affiliations.
Okay, I accept. Are the paramilitaries that he is referring to government troops? Are they militia? Or are they a bunch of guys that got together and call themselves a military? I mean, is this the Ku Klux Klan type of thing? Is it a bunch of good old boys with pickup trucks? What are the paramilitaries, Colin? Who are they? Are they government people?
No, but they work hand in hand with the state police. They are trained by the military. They are supported by the military. They are protected by the military. That's why these atrocities are going on. One of the demands that I have and that many people have is that the Mexican government immediately disarm these paramilitary groups, immediately get the army out of Chiapas.
The army cannot go out of Chiapas because if the army go out of Chiapas, there would be a chaos.
Sign the accords.
Let him have a thing. You can talk when we get back. We've got a minute. We haven't got enough time. What we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, is a difficult subject, and you can tell that. And the difference today is that we actually have two sides to one story on, and I don't usually do that kind of program. I like one-sided programs. I like taking one topic and going bang, 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 bang. But I don't know enough about this to even begin to cover it and be the opposite. I certainly don't know what you know. I don't know what you know. I haven't been there. I've only been to Mexico. We'll be back in 2 minutes, and we will take some phone calls. We'll be right back.
To find out the effect of gas prices and computerization on your financial future, watch The Financial Planner.
In sport, Kind of sounds like a deodorant or something like that, you know, like a men in speed stick.
Epic adventure. Timeless drama. Give me the bomb. Just give it to me. And unforgettable faces. Brought to life on film. Books. Spiritually dangerous books. The greatest movies of all time. With the biggest stars of all time. Remarkable stories that are history on film. Wednesday through Saturday nights at 8 Eastern, 9 Pacific on History Television.
Why are people turning to MeTV? You can turn to over 100 outstanding movies every month on TBS. History Television lets you browse through the greatest stories of all time. You'll get hilarious shows that are too hot for regular TV on the Comedy Network. And space is the only place you'll find the X-Files 5 nights a week. Call 1-888-ROGERS-1 to order MeTV for as little as $5.99 a month. MeTV. It's TV you can always turn to.
Rogers Community Sports has the leagues you want to see and won't see anywhere else. The Western Lacrosse Association, BC Junior Football Association, the BC Hockey League, and much more. Catch Community Sports this Sunday at noon and 3 p.m. on Rogers Community Television, Channel 4.
Hello, Complaint Department.
When you've got a beef and you need some relief.
Okay, so again, making my point, I'm against paramilitary organizations everywhere, and I am in favor of indigenous peoples, because as soon as you get a bunch of males or females or people together, give them guns and give them power, a certain esprit de corps comes in. They become holier than thou, holier than the people that they're supposed to be looking after or helping.
Let me tell you that the problem in Chiapas is that there are...
Let Colin have this hit, because
Thank you.
we went, okay.
Concerning the paramilitaries, I have a report here from the Attorney General's Office of Mexico. It says the Attorney General's Office confirmed that public security officials in the municipality of Chenalo, Chiapas, protected civilian groups that, quote unquote, with no justification, were carrying high-caliber weapons. The Attorney General's Office stated that these groups were not only tolerated, but allowed to help with public security duties in the region. This new information emerged in the testimony of 5 police officers in the state who admitted that they had protected armed civilian groups. They testified that Commander Felipe Vasquez Espinosa, who is also in prison, ordered them to protect these groups.
Oh, wait a minute now. Are you telling me then that the Mexican government has imprisoned some of the people that are involved in this already?
That is true. That is what's happening.
Okay, just a second. Don't you stay out of it for a second. I know you've had a really good run at it.
Yes, they have to cover their butt.
Okay,
somehow.
well, hold on. If you put it, I mean, they've arrested people for killing the candidate for the president of Mexico, have they not? I mean, this is not that people are running rampant and nobody's doing anything. How many people have been arrested for this massacre?
I believe
How many people are
about
in jail?
100.
They've arrested 100 people.
I believe so, more or less.
Well, it sounds to me like
60 remain in jail.
60 are still in jail today. Well, that hasn't come out. I haven't seen that in the mainland press.
If only 60 remain, then why were the others released if they're all up on murder charges?
Because in Mexico there is a state of law and there are process, and where there is no evidence to put somebody in jail,
well, then very soon
lots of people get arrested and are then released. I mean, that happens quite regularly. They arrest everybody that's there, and then they let the ones go that they decide they don't have any evidence about. But are you telling me then that there are 60 people in jail? Then you're telling me and reading something that from the testimony of these people in jail that they're now coming down and agreeing with what you're saying, that there was a paramilitary group, that the legitimate government forces protected them.
Yes.
And they've admitted that.
The Attorney General.
Okay, well, then it sounds like something's being done. But and we're talking, I mean, we've just taken away guns from all our auxiliary policemen in the province of British Columbia, too. I mean,
the thing that is being done is that Mexico
have another run at it here,
is trying to keep all eyes and ears from the external world out of Chiapas. That's why they have been deporting and expelling international observers.
But wait a minute, you were there.
Back to the other point.
Okay,
I would like
just
to
save
come
it.
back
Make
to
a
the
note. You come
They
back to it in a second.
deported 140 Italians from a delegation that went to Chiapas. Among these were parliamentarians, Italian parliamentarians, mayors of cities and towns. They deported them, and many of, I think 80 cannot return for at least 10 years. 40 of them cannot return ever in their life. This was the ruling of the Mexican government.
But the U.S. government at the Blaine border is turning people back every day, 100 people a day, banning Canadians from entering the United States for all sorts of things.
The U.S. government is very foolish and very corrupt and very stupid.
You just don't like governments. Okay, how did you, you're sitting here in North Vancouver, British Columbia, on a television program that will be seen by a whole bunch, or could be seen by a couple of million people, and getting your point out with a little difficulty, I will agree with you. But you were there, you were an observer. Were you evicted? Were you ejected? Were you deported?
No, I constantly had to avoid immigration and Army checkpoints. At one point, I hassled with the Army for over half an hour.
Isn't it? That's just
well,
a good
that's
idea
true.
Anyway. And you did stay there. Okay, so let's get, how long were you there for?
I was there in Chiapas for a month. I
For
visited
1 month.
the site of the massacre. I visited Polo.
Have you got any whip marks or anything on you?
No, I've got some whip marks in my heart.
Okay.
From
Now,
photos like these.
okay, let me just take one more second. You were there. Who were you sanctioned by?
I went down as an individual, and once I got there, I was sanctioned by a group called Enlace Civil, which is one of the only 2 groups allowed to send observers to the indigenous.
So you were there
villages.
as an official observer.
I was there as an official observer.
What type of visa?
Okay. It's,
with the visa in my heart as a human being.
Yeah, tourist visa, right? Yeah.
As a tourist visa.
Okay.
So you will
It's
pass my
interesting
name.
because foreigners are not allowed to interfere.
You will
in
pass my
issues.
name onto the Mexican government.
Well,
I'm sure.
okay, that's not what I'm worried about, because that's like saying I went down to go shopping and I bought an apartment while I was in Bellingham. That's illegal to do too.
Yeah.
If you say you're going down, to the States, just for the record, and let's get that straight. If you say you're going down to go shopping at Bella's Fair, and you get on an airplane and fly to Hawaii for a 2-week vacation, you can be deported, your car can be seized at the Bellingham airport, and you can be banned from the United States for the next 10 years. So, I mean, and people do that all the time. That's the law. You were there, you observed, you brought back. Did anybody take away your camera or take away your pictures?
No, because I didn't know I was there.
Okay, let's see the pictures that you do have. Can we bring some of these out? Because they're people, they're pictures of people.
Here is a picture of Acteal, in which a similar situation to this was occurring.
Okay, you can look back over your shoulder and see what we've got if we bring these up.
On the morning of December 22nd of last year, people were praying in this church outdoor chapel when they were brutally assassinated. We spoke of that. That was Acteal.
So this is about a year old then?
No, that's only, the photo's about 3 months old, but the situation is about 5 months old.
Okay.
Here is a Zapatista. This is a young girl who is one of the more than 6,000 displaced refugees in Polo, Chenaló, Chiapas. These people are living underneath pieces of plastic. I had some very good pictures showing the situation, but the consul here decided that they did not want to present them to the public eye, the reality of the truth.
You didn't...
I didn't see anything offensive about the other pictures, but that's okay. What is this?
This is a sign painted on the side of a building in Acteal, which shows what the people felt for their compañeros who were assassinated in this massacre. I again had some pictures. Here's another, just displaced refugees. These are mainly women and children who have very little food, no clean drinking water. They are living underneath pieces of plastic. The Zapatistas refuse to accept anything from the government. And what they do receive is from civil society.
Okay.
These are Zapatistas which would probably be labeled terrorists by at least the U.S. government and most likely the Mexican government as well. Here's a good picture of a terrorist and her little brother.
Okay.
I found those nice pictures of Mexican people,
Well,
beautiful Mexican people.
They certainly look,
I had some photos of the Mexican military, which again the consul was afraid to let me show them because
No. The problem here is that he just let me know about this issue today, and you didn't allow me to bring other information.
I called you 3 days ago, and you can bring anything you want.
But just a second. There's no doubt that I did not talk to the council, and I didn't ask. So what he has said, and that's fair, is that if we're going to bring a bunch of pictures, he should have a chance to have pictures as well. And I'm much more concerned and intrigued by the fact that we saw the headlines, and you'll admit this, Council, that the headlines, the news reports of this massacre when it came down were atrocious. But like a lot of things, we don't know internally in Canada that things were being done. And your report, when you first started reading this out, talking about the 5 officers that are in jail, and then we find out there's 100 arrested and 60 are still in jail. And of course, in Canada, the concept of 60 people being held in jail without bail gets a little tough as well.
There are hundreds of Zapatistas held in jail just from the last intrusions by the Mexican military during the last month.
Okay, 1 second. Hundreds.
Hundreds.
In jail today?
Do I have the chance to respond now?
Oh, yeah, you can. Yeah,
okay. He's been talking about 10 minutes. Yeah, now I think I have 10 minutes. Okay. First, the story of that situation in Actil, it's that there was a conflict between families that was escalating. And there were families living in different regions, different towns of the region.
When were you in Actil?
I was respecting yourself.
When were you in Actil?
Yes, I've been in Chiapas.
Sir.
I've been in Chiapas.
When were you in Actil? And when were you last in Chiapas?
Will you let me finish? I
There are
respect what
human
you were
lives
saying.
at
If I'm not allowed to talk, I leave.
1 second.
Human lives.
Okay, let me just...
If you don't allow me to talk, I leave, okay?
Let the council have his say here.
Then there was a conflict between families that was escalating. There were peoples of the different families that were killed.
Let me get. In North America, we have a famous Hatfields and McCoys battle that took place.
Yeah.
That's right. The two families are always fighting. We make a joke about it.
Yeah.
So, is your explanation at this point then that there's a group of families, there's a group, well, maybe we should call it, there's one group indigenous people here, a tribe, a native band, or a family?
Both from indigenous origin.
Okay.
Associated with different political parties and with different religious groups.
And then over here, someplace nearby, there is another one.
Right.
Okay.
And they start to kill each other since the last year. There were several members of each side who were killed or were assaulted.
Now,
or were...
Are these indigenous peoples,
yes.
or are these crime families? Could anybody say that these were illegal families? Are they growing drugs? Is there a drug cartel or something involved in this?
I think there were groups living in different towns in the area of Chiapas, some of them associated with persons in authority in those towns. Okay. And there were, and some of them were related with the PRI, and some of them were related with the PRD, and some with other groups.
PRI, PRD,
doesn't tell you
what
anything.
Are they?
Well, the ruling party or the opposition party.
Okay, so those are the difference. That's like the NDP.
Right,
and the, okay,
right.
Good.
Now, there was also a conflict between the property of a certain part of land in that area, and one son of the leader of the cacique, which is a figure that exists, of one of them, was killed in one of the families, and then that family and that cacique with his group went and killed the others, and what was considered an act of vengeance that was supported as the
so that's what you're saying.
That's the official story. That's what has been found after all the investigations. And let me tell you something. The mayor of that city, which was working with the ruling party, was arrested because he was found to be connected with that cacique. The chief police of that area was also arrested.
So you're saying the mayor and the chief of police were arrested. Now, are they still in jail, or were they being?
Yes.
They are in jail right now today.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, that's true. You state that's true.
And also other persons from the state police and from some of the local military campaments or representatives in that area have been also found to be somehow connected with that group. And they still in jail also.
So what you're finding is that there is a corruption, and my perception, understand, my perception as a white North American is that there is a lot of corruption internally in Mexico and within the police force. That's my perception. It may or may not be true.
The president has recognized that there is corruption in Mexico and that we have to fight it. And we have recognized that there is corruption that has been affecting us because of drug trafficking or other issues. That is not something that we are hiding. We are recognizing it, and there has been the legal elements to, when there is evidence, to put someone in jail, and there is in this as there is in this case, to have these people in jail.
So you're physically doing something?
Yes.
Okay, because again, something that you two don't know is that at one time down in the Caribbean I had a couple of lawyers. One was named Morris Bishop, and he overthrew the Prime Minister of Grenada. Then his law partner killed him, and he became Prime Minister, and then President Reagan invaded Grenada, and Bud Cort disappeared. So this happens, this kind of thing happens on a regular basis in different countries. At one time the Vancouver City Police was ruled to be one of the more corrupt police forces in North America back in, I think it was the 30s, and that's nothing to do with today. But
and let me tell you that just last week,
1 second, Colin, we got
just last week was found that the Zapatistas groups, or the groups related with them, because as I said, it's a combination of groups from different backgrounds and different origins, were also carrying arms, and there was found a campament with a lot of firearms and a lot of instruments, telecommunication.
Well, the fact that they have two-way radios and stuff, I'm not going to get excited about that.
But no, it's important because part of what has been agreed and achieved is that the Zapatistas have an area in which they have been respected for over 3 years. Part of these peace accords was that they will be respected in certain area, and they move freely in that area.
No, the Zapatistas are not the paramilitary group. The paramilitary group was
part of the problem, I would say, is to call them paramilitary groups, because I think that is that makes reference to problems that had happened in other regions of the world, and which is not really the situation in Mexico. But by using that connotation, it's possible to present it in a very negative way, and I against that. I think it's a problem of a conflict of different groups of different regions. Now, the Zapatistas was the group that initiated the situation in Chiapas.
Do it another way. Is this similar? Not that Colin's maybe not going to agree. In your opinion, is this similar to the Protestants and the Catholics in Ireland, in the British government trying to bring peace? I mean, that may be simplifying it, but we see that all the time, and I have, again, relatives that have...
As a diplomat, and Mexico is very respectful of what happens in other countries.
Okay, Colin.
Okay, the accords...
You got your shot.
The accords which were signed but never ratified have never been acknowledged or respected by the Mexican government. The Mexican government instead builds up a military circle around the whole area. Lately there have been intrusions into these autonomous municipalities to destroy, to incarcerate Zapatista supporters who have set up their autonomous governments. There is no respect whatsoever for the original accords. This is why we demand that the original accords be signed. The whole issue is over land in Chiapas. The land has gradually been stolen from the indigenous people, and they grow their food upon the land. Without land, they starve. It's been stolen by the wealthy landowners. It's been stolen by corporations. The United States has a very keen interest in the whole affair of Mexico. The United States is supporting the Mexican military with weapons, training at the infamous School of the Americas, for example. In the last 2 years alone, more than 300 Mexican officers were trained in this school that teaches torture, butchery, etc., etc.
Now, hold on. That's a heavy study. How do you know they teach torture and butchery? I mean...
Keep saying without evidence and without proving. And how do you know that that comes from Mexico?
Well, this comes from the report that was released about a year ago when one of these manuals from the School of the Americas was distributed, or at least fell into the hands of a reporter, and the U.S. Congress knows about this. The people of the United States should know about this, but many are ignorant of what their own government does. The CIA is very heavily involved in the whole situation in Mexico and in Chiapas in particular. The embassy sent their so-called attachés in January of this year and I believe 3 times last year to Chiapas. The attaches of the U.S. Embassy are the CIA and the United States military.
If there's 6, how have you got? I'm going to ask do another way, because you've obviously met with these groups. You've been there for a month, and you were sanctioned as an observer by the group, maybe not by the government. Let me ask a question. If there's 60 people in jail now, and you can agree with that, can you? Do you agree with that number?
There are many, many more in jail. There are 60 from this particular
60.
Incident.
If there are 60 people in jail, how many more people did you want to? What is it that you're?
The intellectual authors of the crime have not been touched. That's why there are these individuals, these low-level persons who are involved in it, in prison. Excuse me, I'm speaking. Thank you. The high level of the Mexican government and of the Mexican military is involved. On January 8th, in El Proceso magazine, I'm proving it right now if you'd let me finish.
Let him make a
in
statement.
an issue of El Proceso magazine, which is a weekly magazine in Mexico, on January 8th was an article which divulged the official plan of the Mexican government involving the Mexican military to repress in a low-intensity war, using the paramilitaries, the civilians who support the Zapatistas in Chiapas.
But wait a minute, this is published
was a report.
This is published in a magazine in Mexico.
Yes, and it occurred in September.
I
September of 1994 is when the initial counterinsurgency plan, which was provided by the United States military for Mexico, this plan went into effect in September of 1984. In January of 1985, the first paramilitary groups were formed, financed, trained by the Mexican government. Fact, documented fact.
Okay, you're going to have to get this for me, and we're going to have to present it to the Consul General so that he can answer it. And I guess we're going to have to do another show on this one of these days, if you would like to, because we have an argument, and why we're fighting it out in a studio in North Vancouver is beyond me. Because I have a hard time thinking that nothing is happening if you actually physically can tell me that the mayor, the police chief, and 60 other people are in jail because of the atrocity that we read, saw, heard about in Chiapas.
Let me tell you something, because I want to make this point clear. Mexico has been open for people from all over the world to travel to Mexico.
We're a member of NAFTA.
And we're a member of NAFTA. There are 1 million Canadians who go to Mexico every year, and they enjoy Mexico. And I'm very pleased that many of your viewers are hearing this today. And I hope they can put in the right perspective what he's saying, because he's just saying without any specific proof or evidence
I've got all the
of
proof
what
right
is
here.
happening.
The human rights reports?
Yes, well, these are computer paper. And this is the tactic that has been used by these groups to affect Mexico and to affect what is happening. He was saying, let me finish. He was saying, we demand that these accords are respected in Mexico. Well, let me tell you, you don't have right to demand about the issues in Mexico, because the issues in Mexico have to be decided by Mexicans. And we learned this the hard way because Mexico needs to respect their own sovereignty.
The European Parliament has decided otherwise.
Yeah, that's why if you two of you talk at the same time, Colin, you'll just lose. You won't get out, and then you don't get a chance to say it again. So hold on.
The reason why this group of Canadians and other nationalities were expelled is because they were helping to create an autonomous municipality. That's an issue that it's only allowed to the state legislature. Imagine that here someone decided to create a new municipality somewhere in Canada.
It's in the Accords. They're allowed to, isn't it?
That is not permitted.
Didn't you say it was allowed in the Accords, and that the Accords are being recognized and respected by the Mexican government?
By the law, yes.
This is in the Accords that were signed in 1986.
When you something,
February
guys.
16,
you stop?
1986.
I was talking, isn't it?
Okay.
When the law allows you to do that, when this is something agreed and under the framework of the law, it's correct. But you are not allowed to do it. And a foreigner, regarding if it's in the law or not, the foreigner is not allowed to interfere in issues internal, as we don't interfere in yours, and I hope other countries don't interfere in yours.
I accept where you're coming from. You've got it in the accord that they're supposed to get autonomous deal. We're doing the same thing with the Nisga'a negotiations here in the province of British Columbia. If a couple of guys showed up from the United States and started parading around and trying to do something up in British Columbia, I'm quite sure that they would be booted out of the country tomorrow. I mean, I'm in favor of the Nisga'a land. I'm in favor of the Nisga'a land. So I'm trying to figure out why.
The reason why
I'm losing the thing.
Because many of us know the history of Guatemala and El Salvador during the 80s. In Guatemala, for example, there were 442 indigenous villages that were wiped off the face of the earth by the Guatemalan military. This was all kept from the world. And this happened in a period of 18 months.
But we're talking about Mexico, and we're
El
talking about the
Salvador,
90s.
the same thing. Mexico is prepared to do the same thing. That's why they want to get all the international observers out of Mexico so that these massacres, which are about to happen, and I guarantee it, so that they can continue.
You think, okay, so you're saying that your feeling and your point, and I did try and get Dr. Jennifer Wade from Amnesty International, because we discussed Chiapas back in November with Dr. Jennifer Wade from Amnesty International, and she wasn't in town. I wanted to have her here today as well. We're going to have to carry on with this. Here's what I want to get from both of you. Okay? Colin brought some pictures that I personally didn't find. There was one that I can understand. There was only the one picture that I found that not because it was offensive in itself, but because of the words that were on it.
Yes.
That this was purported. Okay, and I can understand that picture. I don't think I would have put that one up. But the rest of the pictures I found would be quite acceptable. What I'd like to ask, I would like to invite both of you and Dr. Jennifer Wade to come back. Colin, I want you please to provide the Consul General with all this information that you've got here, particularly the ones that you have that report that are, let's make up a binder. I'd like a copy, you do it. Give it to the Consul General, because I will give you another shot at this, but it has to be in the next 3 weeks, because I'm going to go away for 10 weeks starting on June the 26th.
That's a deal.
Okay, so you're going to put all this together. I want it in a neat binder as if you're going to court. You've got a chance to appear before the World Court and in Vancouver.
Let me tell you that I just received authorization to allow foreigners to visit Mexico as human rights observers. And I documented already some people from Vancouver to go to Chiapas and see what is going on there.
Okay.
And that's a sample,
and
we don't have a problem.
And on that, we have to counsel. You're going to get copies of the pictures to Colin. Colin's going to get copies of the pictures to you. You're going to give your proof to the Consul. I want copies of both of it. You're going to let me be the judge on this, but whatever you produce, we're going to have it and put it back on the air, okay?
I'd like to thank you very much, David.
We're out of time. Now, Colin, if somebody wants to get hold of you and carry on, what is your phone number?
My phone number is 254-1709.
254-1709. If they want to get hold of you, to carry on for the Consul. What is the phone number of the Consul of Mexico?
684-1859.
684-1859. So they can get hold of either of you. All right, we're going to be back Monday. Monday we're going to talk about drug identification numbers and how the government is trying, the Canadian government and the world courts are trying to take away all our health medicine, our herbal remedies. Tuesday, we're going to talk about Indian land claims in British Columbia. It'll be just as good as this, I promise you. And Friday, Howard Lyman, the guy that got Oprah Winfrey into the $20 million lawsuit for saying that hamburgers were dangerous.